Welcome everyone, this is Dr. Peter Khan. Welcome to the Ask Dr. Khan show, where you're one whiteboard away from health. This is the first time I rolled that out with my tongue. It was a little rough, but I made it. You are just one whiteboard away from your health. On this show, I give you information that's going to help you solve your health puzzle. So today, we're going to be talking about the adrenal glands. Now, the adrenal glands are two small walnut-sized glands, hormone glands, on top of your kidneys. And the adrenal gland makes hormone to help you deal with stress by making stress hormones such as cortisol, epinephrine, which is used during times of fight or flight response. But very importantly, adrenal gland also controls blood sugar stability. It also has function in controlling blood pressure, electrolyte balance, and immune function, and sex hormone production. So it does a lot of different things. Now, the adrenal gland is probably the bastard child of functional medicine and the bastard child of natural alternative medicine, because anytime somebody says, oh, I'm tired, I have sweet craving, I have an energy issue, automatically say, oh, you probably have adrenal fatigue. And maybe many of you watching the show have either been told you have adrenal fatigue, or you suspect you have adrenal fatigue, and you've been Googling online and looking for adrenal fatigue information. If that's you, put adrenal fatigue in the comment section. So I know that I'm talking to the right audience, and this information, I'm going to tailor it to you. Okay, so put adrenal fatigue in the comment section if you think you have adrenal fatigue, or you've been told that you have adrenal fatigue. Now, how do you know? What are some of the common symptoms? Well, really, adrenal dysfunction can come in two flavors. Okay, so let's talk about the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland. You can either have adrenal gland that's functioning too much. It's pumping out too much stress hormone. Specifically, when we're talking about adrenal fatigue or adrenal gland hyperfunction, too much or too little, we're usually talking about cortisol. Although that's only one of many hormones that the adrenal gland produce, typically we're evaluating that because that has the most impact on your symptoms and on your health. So either you have too much or too little. Symptom of too much cortisol typically is you're stressed easily, you're sensitive to stress, you may sweat easier, you may have trouble losing weight, especially around the midsection, like belly fat. You may have insulin resistance problem, blood sugar issues. You may have trouble falling asleep at night, okay? So these are classic adrenal hyperfunction type of symptoms. You may also have energy issues, crashing at a certain time of the day. If you have low adrenal function, instead of saying adrenal fatigue, we should specify saying you have low adrenal function, because under the low adrenal function, you can be very, very low, which is adrenal fatigue. And I'll clarify what that really means, because many of you don't have adrenal fatigue. You just have adrenal hypofunction. You don't really have fatigue. And I'll explain to you that just a little bit. Now, when you have hypoadrenal function or low function, typically you feel tired. You may have a hard time getting up in the morning. You may have a hard time staying asleep at night. You fall asleep okay, but then you don't stay asleep. You get interrupted sleep. You wake up and you can't fall back to sleep. You may have a lot of sweet cravings. You may feel like you need caffeine just to keep you going in the morning to wake up, or you need to drink caffeine all day just to function. You may have energy crashes throughout the day. You may have low blood sugar symptoms, where if you wait too long before you eat, you get shaky, lightheaded, irritable. You may also have low blood pressure. Typically, people with adrenal hypofunction will have lower pressure than normal, so you get dizzy, easily lightheaded, especially if you change position. So these are adrenal hypofunction symptoms. Now, when people hear the word adrenal fatigue, true adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure is actually not that common, okay? True adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure is if you have low cortisol and low DHEA and low adrenaline, your epinephrine, norepinephrine. If all of those are low, then that's adrenal fatigue. Many of you have symptoms of poor adrenal function, low, right? Low adrenal function, but you may only be low in cortisol, but not the other three. So technically speaking, adrenal fatigue is diagnosed when all of these hormones are low, but many of you may have adrenal fatigue symptoms, but not technically in that category. Okay, it's just words, but it's important to clarify because then that may change how we actually fix this problem, supplement and otherwise. Okay, now that's not really today's topic. Today's topic is the top 10 effects, health effects of adrenal problem. Okay, the top 10 effects. What does the adrenal problem turn into? Because a lot of times people think, well, I have adrenal issue, so I either can't sleep, or I have trouble losing weight, or I have energy issues. True, but you must know that the adrenal gland has its tentacles reaching into multiple areas. It can cause problem in multiple areas. So this is where functional medicine really shines. See, we're not really treating the adrenal symptoms, because certainly there's a lot of people out there that just selling a supplement for adrenal, right? You just Google adrenal fatigue supplement, everybody's gonna sell you something, but you must understand what you're trying to fix, because sometimes it is the adrenal, sometimes it's not the adrenal, and sometimes it's both. And the adrenal gland has tentacles that reach into other areas of the body. So that's really what I want to talk about today. The top 10 health effects of adrenal problems, so you can see how this can actually promote disease or problem in other areas. So I'm going to put a circle around adrenal. So from the adrenal, okay, whether it's hypo or hyperfunction, too much or too little, one of the things they can screw up is your blood sugar. Adrenal hyperfunction, too much cortisol. Cortisol is really the main thing we're talking about. Now, don't think of cortisol as a bad guy, right? Because you need cortisol to function. Cortisol, which is one of the main hormones produced by the adrenal gland, help you with inflammation, help you with blood sugar stability, help you with just healing your body. So you need cortisol. It's just when the amount is too much or too little, according to the specific needs of the body, that's when it becomes a problem. So when you have adrenal hyperfunction, too much cortisol, what that's going to cause is high blood sugar. It's going to cause all the symptoms associated with high blood sugar or insulin resistance. It's going to promote insulin resistance, which is going to lead to blood sugar dysfunction. It's going to lead to the midsection weight gain. If you have low adrenal function, you may have reactive hypoglycemia. That's where you crash if you wait more than 3-4 hours before you eat. You get shaky, lightheaded, irritable, so your blood sugar becomes really unstable. Some people can have this pattern where it causes your blood sugar to be like a roller coaster. So adrenal issue can definitely impact blood sugar, which is going to impact your energy, mitochondrial energy production, and brain function, which is heavily dependent on glucose. Next, adrenal dysfunction can impact thyroid. How so? Remember, thyroid function starts in the brain. So in the brain, we have the hypothalamus, which is another hormone gland, and then that stimulates the pituitary gland, which is another hormone gland in the brain, and this makes a hormone called the thyroid stimulating hormone that stimulates the thyroid. Now guess what? The pituitary gland is pretty busy. It also makes what's called ACTH, adrenal corticotropin hormone, which this hormone is what stimulates the adrenal gland. So this gland works with 6 different glands. It makes multiple hormones controlling multiple glands. So if your adrenal gland's not working properly, what's going to do is going to have a feedback loop causing problem with the pituitary and shutting down thyroid TSH function. So on lab tests, we'll identify this with somebody with a thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH level, that's below like 1.5, not 0, but just low, right? Lower than normal, but they're not taking too much medication. They don't have any medication overdose problem. They're not taking even thyroid hormone. They just have low TSH, which what happens is then your thyroid gland will not get the stimulation it needs to make thyroid hormone. So adrenal dysfunction can throw out the HPA axis, which is this feedback loop in the brain that talks to the thyroid, and then so the adrenal can actually throw out the thyroid by throwing off brain feedback mechanisms. Okay, this is how the thyroid-adrenal connection comes in. And again, obviously, we have the pituitary itself, specifically the anterior pituitary. because the anterior pituitary, as I mentioned, makes ACTH, which controls the adrenal, makes TSH, which controls thyroid, also makes follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which controls estrogen and progesterone production. So it's going to have an impact on sex hormones, going to have an impact on testosterone production in men. So if you have pituitary issues, then we're going to see someone with perhaps low libido. We're going to see someone that may be thirsty all the time due to the effect on your body's ability to retain fluid. You may have problem with amenorrhea, where you're just missing periods or you have irregular cycle. And you may have weight gain in the midsection due to the impact of adrenal. So again, it's this feedback loop from adrenal gland. If you have chronically high cortisol or low cortisol, it's going to impact the feedback control center in the brain and therefore throw that off and affect all the subsequent glands, which you're going to experience symptom in that area. The next section it's going to affect your liver. Okay? So know that your liver, when you have high cortisol, so now again, why do we have high cortisol? Remember, cortisol is there to help you with stress and inflammation. So if you're really stressed or you're really inflamed, your body's going to try to help you by making a bunch of the stress hormone to help you get through it, right? But that's supposed to be a temporary response. So if you don't change your lifestyle, you continue to eat processed food and continue to have a job that's stressful, you don't ever do anything to relax and calm down or exercise to alleviate the stress, or you have chronic infection and toxins, that's going to promote this chronically elevated cortisol, and your liver has to break down the cortisol. See, any hormone your body produces, your body also has to break down, right? It's a cycle. So you have to eliminate the hormone. That's gonna, when you have high cortisol, it's gonna put stress on the liver to have to detox all this hormone in the system. Just like an oil filter, it can only process so much. So if you overburden with it, then the liver is gonna start to bog down. It's not gonna be able to detox properly. It's gonna affect liver bile transformation, your ability to get rid of other toxins. Then you're gonna start to have liver symptoms. What are some liver symptoms? You may have skin problem. If you can't detox through the liver, toxin may express through the skin. You may have hormonal issues. For female, this is really important because if you can't eliminate hormones, hormone recirculate into the body, so estrogen may start recirculating into a more toxic form, then you become estrogen dominant. Then you start to have cysts and fibroids and heavy bleeding, heavy menstrual cycle and painful cycle. So this is how chronic adrenal problem can impact liver and therefore impact hormone health. Okay? Next, adrenal dysfunction is going to impact leaky gut. Because high cortisol, chronic stress, it's going to decrease secretory IgA. This is a specific type of immunoglobulin that's found in your mucosa, in your gastric mucosa, your intestinal lining. It's going to decrease these specific immune cells, which is going to decrease your gut immune function, which is going to lead to leaky gut. Also, when you have chronically high cortisol from stress and adrenal dysfunction, it's also going to decrease the regeneration of your gastric lining. High cortisol decreases gut lining regeneration. It thins your gut lining. Also, it causes leaky gut by inducing inflammation. So these three things, the effect of adrenal dysfunction will lead to leaky gut. Okay, so these are the things that adrenal dysfunction leads to. Liver dysfunction, which will lead to hormone imbalance. It's going to lead to anterior pituitary issues, so that's going to screw with your hormones. It's going to lead to thyroid dysfunction. It's going to lead to blood sugar dysfunction. Oh my gosh, it's got a tentacle reaching into every part of the body when you have adrenal problems. This is a big problem. And that's why it's the bastard child of in functional medicine and natural medicine, because almost everybody walks around with some type of adrenal dysfunction. Okay. Next, it's going to have an impact on neurodegeneration. Neurodegeneration. What that means is, it literally, when you have high cortisol, it's going to kill off brain cells, specifically in the hippocampus area of the temporal lobe. So this is the part of the brain where short-term memory is processed. So what we know is that when you have Alzheimer's disease is a condition where the hippocampus region of the temporal lobe is degenerated. So when you have chronically high stress, adrenal dysfunction, high cortisol, it's going to lead to degeneration of the part of the brain to help you with memory. Therefore, it's going to lead to Alzheimer's. So this is so important to modify stress, to manage it, to reduce it through any means possible, either lifestyle change, dietary issues, supplements, do whatever it takes to protect your brain. On the same token with that, if you have adrenal problems, it's going to lead to insomnia. You may have trouble falling asleep, or you just can't stay asleep, you wake up frequently, because it turns out the part of the brain that controls that sleep-wake cycle, because the cortisol has a day-night sleep-wake cycle, and that circadian rhythm, which is your day-night sleep-wake cycle, is controlled also by the hippocampus area of the temporal lobe. So if you have trouble sleeping and you have trouble with recall, maybe you don't have Alzheimer's dementia, but you may have early signs of it. You're starting to have short-term memory issues. You walk into a room, you forget why you walk in there in the first place. You need a list for everything. You get introduced to somebody, 5 seconds later, you forget the name already. This is a warning sign that the hippocampus area of your temporal lobe may not be functioning properly. And if you also have sleep problem to go along with it, then that's double the confirmation that there may be some problem there. And there's things you can do. And that's what we do with our clients through our telemedicine program, where we help you identify the root cause and start to stave off these type of problems before it becomes a problem. Okay? So next, it's also going to cause immune system problems if you have adrenal dysfunction. Remember, today's topic is top 10 health effects of adrenal dysfunction. Dysfunction. Okay? So we have immune system challenges. When you have a chronically high cortisol, it's going to lead to low white blood cell count, which makes it hard for you to fight off infection. So you get sick all the time. You don't understand why. Every year, this time of the year, this season, you always get sick. Chronic sinus infection, chronic upper respiratory issue. You just can't clear the infection because your adrenal gland, when it's dysfunctional, high cortisol weakens your immune system by decreasing white blood cell, but also decreasing secretory IgA, which is, we talked about here, that mucosal lining that provides that immune function in your gut. Then we have gastric ulcers. The original study by Hans Selye, the physiologist who identified the classic stress response, showed that when you're chronically stressed, you develop gastric ulcers. Why? Because cortisol has the effect of thinning out your intestinal mucosa. So that's why it can cause leaky gut. Remember, decreased regeneration, not just in the intestinal lining, but also in the stomach lining as well. So that can cause problem in that area. But also, because of decreased immune function, then you're more likely to get H. pylori infection, which is a bacteria that can cause ulcer due to decreased immune function. See, it's all connected. Let's put a red circle around this. Have we got to 10 yet? Do you see the tentacles that this can reach? And most people think, oh, I have adrenal issue, and you have to fine tune it. You have to get that information, one information at a time, one whiteboard at a time. Learn the information. Go through my past episodes on Facebook, on the timeline, or go to my YouTube channel to watch the previous presentation on whiteboard. One whiteboard at a time. You're going to fill in the puzzle pieces. You're going to start to figure out what you need to do. And we're always here to help, to put this into context for you by having a one-on-one consultation if you should need it. Okay? So how many effects we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This doesn't count. This is part of this bubble. Okay, we're going to do one more. So lastly, this is going to have problem when you have high cortisol. This is going to cause cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular. Gotta use red for the bubble. Stay consistent. Okay. When you have chronic high cortisol or adrenal stress, it's going to lead to cardiovascular disease, which is still one of the top killers in America, from stroke, heart attack, vascular issues, this is a big problem, and it can be caused by adrenal. We always blame cardiovascular disease, heart attack on cholesterol, which there's no scientific proof that shows that cholesterol, high cholesterol, cause heart attack, the majority of the heart attack, right? Because you have people with low cholesterol that have heart attack as well. And you have people who are on cholesterol medication and still have heart attack. So obviously that can't be the only thing. There are other factors besides cholesterol that leads to cardiovascular disease. So adrenal dysfunction due to high cortisol can definitely lead to cardiovascular disease. How? Well, if you have high cortisol, that's going to increase blood pressure. And as you know, blood pressure is a risk factor for stroke. You can also have, not just from cortisol, if you have adrenal dysfunction, adrenaline hormones also have the effect, epinephrine, norepinephrine has the effect of raising blood pressure. So not just cortisol, other hormones from adrenal gland can also push high blood pressure. And then you have aldosterone, which is another hormone that regulate electrolytes. And you have high aldosterone, you can retain sodium and push out your pressure as well. So this will lead to high blood pressure, which will be a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. In addition to, when you have high cortisol, it's going to contribute to high blood sugar. And we know that high blood sugar insulin resistance is the #1 cause of heart disease. Dysglycemia, blood sugar diabetes, is the #1 cause of heart disease because it's so inflammatory. And not only that, when you have cortisol issue, you're going to have more likely to have obesity, and that's a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And not only that, when you have high cortisol, you tend to be more inflamed. And we know that heart disease is really caused by inflammation. And blood sugar is one of the best ways to get inflamed if you have blood sugar dysfunction, especially high blood sugar. So the inflammation, the obesity, the insulin resistance, along with the blood pressure effect, is why adrenal dysfunction can lead to cardiovascular disease. So you have to take this very seriously. Now, how do you fix this? Well, I just called out these are the effects. Now, you can go ahead and fix these effects, but remember, some of these are two-way streets. For example, if you have leaky gut, that can cause adrenal dysfunction. If you have adrenal dysfunction, that can cause leaky gut. Some of these arrows are bidirectional. So you have to do the right test to find out which one is heavily weighted for you. Maybe you have this bidirectional axis, but leaky gut is a more prominent, where it's contributing more to adrenal dysfunction than adrenal dysfunction contributing to leaky gut. So we may have to start there. Or for somebody else, maybe the other way around, maybe like this. Then we have to fix the adrenal gland so that we no longer have leaky gut. So it's all individualized. One of the things that we do, though, specifically to help people who are just having this adrenal issue, is to help the body to adapt. You gotta help the adrenal gland to adapt better. How do we help the body adapt? The way we do that is using adaptogens. Adaptogenic herbs, adaptogen, are plant compounds that modulate. Modulation means take out the highs, take out low, help the body to stabilize. You don't want too much, right? Too much is bad, too little is bad. You want to modulate by helping the body to come to its own balance, right? It's all about balance. What the heck does that mean? That means your body has the innate ability to sense the highs and the lows and try to bring it back into the calm state, right? You run, you sprint, your heart rate goes up, you stop sprinting, your heart rate will automatically calm down. Your body's always trying to calm to a resting state after a certain type of highs or lows. Adaptogens help you to come back to that natural calm state. So the product we use is called Adaptogen Pro. Now, why is that important? Because there are many different adrenal supplements on the market. But what you want to do is you don't want to take a stimulatory approach. For example, licorice is an herb that has a stimulatory effect. Well, I shouldn't say it has a stimulatory effect. It has the effect of increasing the half-life of cortisol. It makes cortisol hang around your blood longer. So if you let it hang around longer, you're going to have more cortisol. So it's going to raise the cortisol level. You don't necessarily want to do that with every single person. If you have adrenal fatigue or really bad adrenal hypofunction, licorice root may be appropriate. However, licorice root also stimulates the Th1 immune system. So when people with autoimmune, they may be sensitive to this, or it may be pushing the immune system in the wrong direction. So we like to stay immune neutral with people with autoimmune. So Adaptogen Pro does not contain licorice. It has things like holy basil, eleuthero, which is panax ginseng, which has adaptogenic effect, meaning modulate, take out the highs and the lows. We want to stay away from immunostimulatory things to support the adrenal gland through times of stress. So for athletes, even if you don't have disease, Adaptogen Pro is great for when you're going through a period of stress, either mentally or physically. Like if you're an athlete, you're doing heavy workouts, Adaptogen Pro will be great. Because remember, mental stress, physical stress, emotional stress, your body can't tell the difference between having a really heavy workout or having a deadline or having stress with your kids or eating a processed food that's causing some kind of inflammation. Your body can't tell the difference. It's just all stress. It just knows stress or no stress. And when you're stressed, you pump out cortisol regardless. And then the effect of high cortisol is all the stuff that I just talked about. So living in a eating a standard American diet, living a standard American lifestyle of hustle and bustle, always rushing somewhere, fast pace, with a lot of stress. We have physical, chemical, and some people do it to themselves by overtraining, doing too much, doing too little. You can see how the average American, why so many people have adrenal issues, right? Have high cortisol, or they just fatigue and they go into a low cortisol state. So adaptogen will be a great support for those who have this adrenal dysfunction, while to take this to support the adrenal, so we're preventing or help support these from developing, right? Support, it doesn't prevent any disease, it support normal physiology, okay? While we're looking for the root cause. For example, if you're just eating such a sugary and processed food diet, taking Adaptogen Pro can help your adrenal gland function better so that feedback loop can work better while you fix your diet. Because if you don't fix your diet, keep eating sugary and starchy and processed food, you're always going to have this blood sugar issue, and there's no amount of supplement that'll fix your ruinous lifestyle. It's about being aware of what you're doing and fix what's not working. But you have to first have the awareness, that's even a problem, so that's why I'm speaking to you, and then have the desire to want to fix it, right? That I'm no more, I'm done with this. I'm ready to feel better and do better, because you deserve that for yourself and for your family. You deserve to be better, to be the best version of yourself, to give yourself an upgrade, right? We treat our pets better than we treat our body. We treat our cars better than our body. Time for you to upgrade that, right? And then while we're looking for the root cause, you can help yourself to adapt to the stress better. So Adaptogen Pro is what we use with our clients, and it's one of the best adrenal formula because it's non-stimulatory and it's immune neutral. And you're gonna feel results. What's the dosage? Typically, I give people 2 caps twice a day for maintenance. If you're under extreme stress, we may need to do 2 capsules 3 times a day and do that for a period of time. Couple of weeks to a month, while you're modifying your lifestyle and modifying the stress. So this will help you to support these mechanisms so you don't get into these phases of physiology where you're shifting into blood sugar problems, shifting into thyroid problems, shifting into leaky gut, shifting into neurodegeneration, getting sleep issues, immune problems, gastric problems, cardiovascular disease. It's very useful, but take it in context, addressing the whole person. I'll put a link to this so you can take a look at it, and so you can see if it's right for you. And like I said, it's one of those things that's very safe for you to start. Even if you don't do anything else, it's safe to start, but always do the right thing for the right reason, meaning you should make that lifestyle change. We don't want to just tell you to take a supplement, but it's something you can do standalone, but you need to change your lifestyle. So hopefully this helped you. If you felt like you got value out of this video, and I know you did, I hope you did, please help me share and spread this message to as many people as possible, because this message in natural healthcare is the right message, but it's got to be done right. And my goal, my job here, my obligation to you is to give you accurate information that you can't find anywhere else. So help me spread the message, help me by sharing, like my videos, and find me on YouTube as well. I'll put all the link on the post, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care.